visitation to the home. Okay. When we visit, and we used to take flowers from the altar to people who were shut in, and of course, maybe a book of common prayer with us to read. I always talk about making sure that we're being sensitive to eyesight, getting enough lighting, but are we using large print items? Do we have them available even in our churches? And you got to kind of guide me and tell me where you are at. Is all that available? Yes, no? It is available. Okay, great. So the large print is important. To me, and I'll talk more about this a little bit, but music, well, I've always been shocked at how music affects churches and people. It's good music, it's bad music. I don't like the music. The music is too modern. The music is too old. I've never seen so much discourse over music. But in the aging person, and especially with someone that is having memory or cognitive dissonance of some sort, music is an incredible way of touching people. I think it's the most amazing way. And it is something that I incorporate, believe it or not. If you asked me to sing, you would ask me to leave. You wouldn't even want me to stay. It's so bad. And Michael Gallagher always says, I can teach anybody to sing. I say, yeah, Michael will tell you, not me. I'm his one out. But that doesn't mean I can't take a recording on my phone or on a little player to have. And the music of your childhood is the music that people relate to the most. It's really interesting. And to ask people if they have special pieces that they remember, to bring that with you when you have a visit. Will bring up so many memories for people, and the reflection. And you heard how people need to go back and kind of relive their lives a little bit. Music instills that in people. It takes them places that our conversation cannot. When I'm at a total loss and I can get through this without being offensive, I can even sing Jesus Loves Me. And I can see people whose heads are down, they're drooling. This is the God's honest truth. They're drooling, their eyes are closed, they've had no interaction with me at all. And you start a song that captures them, you will see them lift their head and open their eyes. It's magical. And there are many programs now called Music in Memory or Memory in Music that have been shown to be very effective. But I really encourage you with your pastoral visits to incorporate music in some way. It's just, all I can say is magic. If somebody can talk to you and you can know their favorite songs while they're alert and cognitive and just having a good conversation with you and make notes of their favorite music, someday when you can't speak with them to ask them any longer, they can't respond, you can take that music in. That's a wonderful thing to have on file at a church. What were people's favorite music from church? And it really is divergent. I have to say that. Many of the songs I'd never heard, but other people will know them. So have you had any experience with seeing people just brighten with music, just changing the focus? Yes, no, yes. Well, this has just been one for me for sure. You want to share any
experience? A lot of
experience?
that in the memory care unit when Wesleyan was across in Scenic and Wesleyan. That was really wonderful.
It's just amazing. So I love that, and I don't want to leave that off at all. In the work today you had for preparation, you heard about the Eden alternative. And I'm not a big, I don't have to be fond of every program that has come through for helping people. But I think the Eden alternative has some wonderful components to it. But the most important thing to understand, and this I have seen through my 25 years of experience, that it listed the 3 things that affect seniors the most. And it is loneliness, it is boredom, boredom, and helplessness. And you can be in a facility or in a home filled with family and still feel lonely. And you can be bored out of your gourd, even though they're having activities. Now, I will tell you, I don't look forward to the day that with my family history, I probably will have dementia. But I hope that I can be pleasantly demented, because I see myself, and forgive me, but being a real bitch, because when they bring on the bingo, I have a feeling I'm going to throw stuff. I am not a believer in bingo, Bible, and birthday parties as being our sum totality of activities, because I will ask you this: it doesn't alleviate loneliness. If anything, you can't hear the person, or you're putting your coupon on your little, what do you call them? I don't know, token. What do they call them?
A stamp?
Yeah, right. Oh, a stamp. You're
Yeah,
really high
nowadays,
level.
yeah.
I'm still with the little tokens, but your stamp on the wrong one. I will tell you a funny story if you remind me about bingo in a minute. Boredom is, bingo doesn't solve boredom. And bingo and birthday parties do not solve boredom, even though we have the cake and we have the candles. It doesn't solve boredom. There isn't something there that's really, other than singing happy birthday and watching somebody blow out the candles, where is the interaction? Where does the talk begin? Where does this begin to help people to reflect on their lives, or a favorite birthday or something? Helplessness. Everybody thinks this means that you can't feed yourself, you can't, you don't have mobility or something like that. I think very differently about helplessness. Helplessness to me is that I'm not helping anyone else do anything. That's what helplessness means. Yes, the feeding and the grooming and all of that, we could put it there. But of all the things that happens to us, it's that we have no worth anymore. We don't have a value. We're not giving. So I'm going to tell you, I'll tell you the bingo story. Let me remember that. But I want to tell you about helplessness. I had started a community of hope in an independent, and I joined it with assisted living, because independent living folks don't want anything to do with folks in assisted living or skilled nursing. It's a reminder that they're going to be going down this tube and they don't want to go down it. So my thought was to try to move independent and assisted living and get them working together. So I started a community at Hope at two different organizations. And I had a woman who very well versed in the Bible, and just a very, very spiritual person. But she was angry. And she was an angry person for leaving all of her life and moving into this facility. And she was in the independent living. And I allowed everybody to tell a little bit about what it was like to move in our first meeting, to kind of get a sense of where people were in finding their comfort. She was so mad. And first of all, she didn't get the room she wanted. And she was in a corner room, and she got to look down on the dumpster. And every morning she got to hear the trucks come through at like 4:30 or 5. And if you've ever heard those trucks, they're noisy, it's banging and clanging, and she wasn't going back to sleep. And she was literally pissed off. I mean, and she went downstairs and tried to get people to change her room, and she was paying the same money as other people, and they gave her a little discount on the room, but nothing was going to solve this problem. Over time, we went through the rule, and she came to every meeting, and she was, she's a very spiritual woman, but she was pretty angry. And I began to see that dissipate, but I thought it was just because she's been there longer. She's getting used to it. She's making some friends, that type of thing. When I asked her, why were we seeing the change in her, that I didn't see the anger anymore? She said, oh, let me tell you what I did. She said, and this comes up with doing the dishes and praying when you're doing the dishes and praying when you're doing other things. Her room was where the helicopter for the air vac came over to land at University Hospital. So not only did she have the dumpster in the morning, she had the helicopters all night. And she would hear them. So what she started doing was taking what she learned from the rule and applying it to every time the helicopter went over, she prayed that the helicopter would land safely and the person would be okay. And then she started praying for the pilot, and then the patient, and then the family that would be waiting, and the doctors that would be caring for her, and the nurses, and even the housekeepers to keep it clean so people wouldn't get infections. Well, it was like counting sheep. She went to sleep right away. So when they wanted to move her room and they finally got a room, she couldn't leave. She had a purpose. She wasn't helpless anymore. Her purpose was hearing that helicopter and praying for those garbage men that had to do that at 4:30 in the morning. Tell me that that isn't just the perfect definition of what we're all working to achieve through this. But like I need my bell on my phone or my watch, this was her bell. This was her meditative bell to remind her to pray and to make these things in life. And it gave her such purpose. Amazing. My funny story on bingo, to get a little lighter, was that I checked into a nursing home from a Friday to a Monday morning, and they did not know that I was not a patient. I had a friend who was a medical director in a different facility, and they checked me in. And I was not to walk. I was to have to use a wheelchair for all transfers and have assistance. So I wasn't allowed to walk around. And the first thing, I mean, all of it was strange, but I will tell you that they wanted to take me down for breakfast. And so I went down to a communal breakfast where nobody talked to anybody. Well, that sure took care of boredom and loneliness. Do you know what I mean? And when I tried to talk to somebody, it was like a foreign language that was being spoken, because they did not create that kind of community. And when we talk about community, it doesn't happen just organically sometimes. Sometimes we have to help that. And that's part of it, is finding something that people are all willing to talk about and that other people are interested in. And so then they said it was time, while they did my room, they were going to have bingo. So I went to bingo. I knew I wanted to shoot myself before I went, but I went. I was a good player. And the woman next to me was really cognitively impaired, and the woman next to her was very alert. And she wanted to win bingo really bad. So when the woman would put one of her little, caps on the number, the other woman, when she looked away, would flick it off. So I learned a lot about that. What happens in a normal world is happening with seniors. I want you to understand that life really is, it is a wheel, and people can be very ugly to other people. And I don't know how your 7th grade was, but mine was really miserable. I was not a popular kid in 7th grade. I wasn't beautiful in 7th grade. I didn't get more beautiful. I also didn't get any boobs. I'm still waiting for them. I might get them someday, but I never got them, and that made you popular. But nothing about me was popular in 7th grade. And so that was kind of a hard time to eat lunch at the lunch table. It doesn't change with people in churches. Sometimes when there is dementia, have you noticed people, just kind of push, they don't want to sit with somebody who's demented, or somebody who coughs a lot, or, we have a lot of these things that go back to 7th grade. And our job is to help to bring community and to help people to look past that and to see other things. So it's a whole lesson. I mean, I teach classes in doing this, but I want you to be aware that you're around a lot of 7th graders, and maybe you're a 7th grader. I've seen myself at times be a 7th grader, that, I don't want to put up with that, or my insecurities take over. So what I want to say to you is that most of the things that we give older people to do are meaningless. Here, you want to cut out cards for Christmas? Do you want to? We give them something that has, and we don't even explain the meaning of what they're doing. There is no reason that you can't take over Christmas cards and envelopes for people in a nursing home who are at home or whatever, to ask them to stuff the card if they can do that, or to put the stamps on the, we hardly do it anymore, but put the stamps on the envelope. They don't have to address them. It doesn't have to be detailed. But is it meaningful? Yes, when we explain to them how much this card means to somebody. To receive this card, to be remembered, to not feel that they have been forgotten from our congregations and whatever is going on in our lives, right? So I want you to think about purpose. What is the purpose of some of the things that we ask people to do? So who is it that volunteers at church? Kathy, you're the volunteer. Are you paid or do you volunteer?
I volunteer. I have a lot of different things that I do at the church, different committees and things like that.
Okay, tell me something that you do that makes you feel purposeful.
I'm the president of the Daughters of the King.
Okay, that would do it.
Yeah.
That has a lot of responsibility.
Yeah.
It's engaging other people, keeping people involved, right?
Yes.
But you feel purposeful in your work when you do that. You're not
Yes.
feeling like somebody just threw something at you to do to keep you busy.
Yes.
My sister's 81 years old, and she went over to the senior center that was sponsored by the church in her town up in Massachusetts. And when she got there, they gave her no job and told her just to greet people as they came in the door. They all knew each other. She didn't know anybody. They didn't even greet her. And when it came time to eat lunch, she wasn't invited to sit with anybody. She's sitting at a table by herself. My sister is an introvert, so to make her the greeter and to think she's going to go to a table by herself was crazy. So we have to think about people's personalities and who they are and what their capabilities are, because we want people to succeed. But more than anything else, it should have a purpose to it. When I see the activities that they give seniors, it makes me angry. I pick up stuff. When I was the vice president, I'd pick the stuff up and remove it and say, this is not a purposeful activity. This is junk. To have some guy sticking flowers in a vase. Do you know what I mean? How many men do you know were putting, dried flowers in a vase and feeling purposeful doing that? Do you know anybody? No. How many of you play bingo, by the way? Nobody's a bingo player? Okay. Pat, when you play the harp, nobody knows about, or they might, but you could play the harp for people and they wouldn't know anything about your religious background, right?
True.
Just playing the harp.
Yeah.
And even after you're no longer in the position that you're in, if you were playing the harp for somebody, do you feel purposeful?
I always feel purposeful when I'm playing for others. And it's and what I do is I literally go up and diddle. I am not playing anything, because you, in a hospital, if you're playing a tune and you miss a note, it can make somebody anxious.
Oh, well, how wonderful to know. Well, I've got to watch my singing even more, but I want you to know that if you were cognitively impaired, I would want there to be a harp for you. And I don't care if you play off tune or you don't. I want somebody who played the piano. And even if they mess it up, it doesn't matter. What difference does it make? We want people, and we have to find out, and you got to go back into that kind of life regression. Where did we come from? Because it's the long-term memory that we're going to have that we hold on to, not short-term. But what did they do when they were younger? If they were a teacher, I had a gentleman who was an executive with Kraft Foods, and I mean a very high executive. He was in memory care, and they couldn't find anything to make him feel purposeful. So he was always I mean, I don't mean to say in the way, but there was nothing happening for him. He was just wandering and getting into things he shouldn't. So I said, get the man a desk and get him a phone. Don't hook it into anything. Give him a legal pad and a pencil or a pen. He'd come in and sit at his desk and lift up that phone, and he would make his notes. And somebody would tell him when he was getting very agitated that there was a phone call for him in his office. This is just a little desk on the side. So it isn't always going to be purposeful for somebody else, but for him, it was. And that was what was important. I'll probably be running around with a clipboard asking people what their temp is. I mean, I don't know. But those are some of the things that I think are just incredibly important that we look at.
Excuse me, I'm going to need to scoot, but I really appreciated what you've had to say, Maria. Thank you very much.
Thank you for what you're doing, and thanks for being here and allowing me to come be with you all. And I mean that. It's a great way to start my day. Bye-bye. Have a good day. Be safe.
Thank you.
So I want to tell you about what I call my spiritual care boxes. And my spiritual care box is something that is really meaningful to me. I could have gone out and bought a beautiful box. I could go to Hobby Lobby or somewhere else and get something that was just great. But it doesn't have to be anything special. It can be very simple. So I'm going to show you what I use. And if I'm using the camera, I'm looking 2 different places, but this was a shoebox that I got with a really nice pair of boots in it. It's called Cobbler Concierge. Okay. Can you all see this? Yes. Okay. So I put the things for a visit in this box. Now you could put it in a bag, in a box, it doesn't have to be anything special, but it needs to be ready to go because you never know when you're going to get asked to go do a visit. Last night, I went out to visit somebody who's actively dying, and they said, you won't have to talk with him. I love this when they called me from the nurse's station. You won't have to talk with him because he's unconscious. I thought, okay, I'm not teaching class tonight. And I went out to see him, and he and I had a wonderful conversation. It's just what time he had his morphine. And we had a delightful conversation. So here's my spiritual care box. And what do I put in it? Okay, I'm going to show you some things. You don't have to spend any real money. I have a book of common prayer. Do you remember where they said that people cut their teeth on the pew? I remember the taste of the pew when I was a kid. I was raised Catholic and we lived at the church, but I swear to you, I can remember the taste of the pew. It's kind of nasty to me now, but I remember it. An old prayer book smells different than something you would get at a bookstore. Am I not right? It has a different smell. So if somebody still has that sense of smell, it's going to be interesting. I like that the pages are kind of yellowed. I don't know. How do they look to you? White or yellow? Looks kind of white to me. I don't know on the screen. But anyway, if they're a little yellow, don't go get a new one. Get one that's been used, that other people have touched, that it feels like what they would pick up in church. So I always take a book of common prayer. But if I'm going to visit somebody who's Catholic, I take different things. So I have all of this in that one little box because I'm not worried about your denomination. I'm coming in as a spiritual caregiver. I'm coming in as somebody who is there to meet your needs and be where you are, not where I'm at, but where they are right at that moment. So if somebody tells me that, or I see on their chart that they were Catholic, I have rosary beads. Have you all seen rosary beads? Do you know how cheap these are? So it's not going to cost you money to have the rosary beads. And you don't have to say the rosary, but it's a tactile thing for somebody to hold. Don't you like having stuff in your hands at times? It just relieves tension, especially if you're a new person. And if you come in with something common and they may talk to you about it or tell you about the rosary, Let me tell you my story of the rosary that I hope people will remember. But I was one of 4 children, and every single night till I went off to nursing school, we had to kneel around my parents' bed and say the rosary. You couldn't go out on a date. You couldn't go do your homework. After dinner, you went and knelt around my parents' bed and we all said the rosary. We hated it. We hated it. But it's one of my fondest memories now of looking at each other and trying to make each other laugh. Or my father getting upset. Wonderful memories. That's what we're here for. And bringing us back to a day when our spirituality was being developed. It was just starting for some of these people. A crucifix. Well, I wish this one was a standing one, but I learned that people like to hold things, and this is a very comfortable one for people to hold. It's smooth, it's interesting. Can you all see it or no? A little bit? I don't know. But anyway, this is important to me. I had a gift given to me by a Community of Hope group from one of their conferences that I spoke at. And this was a handmade cross. Beautiful cross, beautiful cross. My dog ate it. And you know what? I love this one more now than ever, and I take it with me all the time because it opens discussion for me. And I'll tell people, my dog ate the cross. That's how this got so wrecked. But, you know, lots of times we feel broken. I'll just ask the question, do you ever feel broken? I do. Sometimes I look at this cross and it reminds me that I'm broken. And I'm looking for healing. And I'm hurting. And what brought my dog such pleasure really upset me. And it starts a conversation. How do you start a conversation when you don't know someone? And if you know them well, you may not need this, but these are little tools that fit in a box that open people's hearts and minds and souls and starts that community feeling, that trust of you. To me, to be able to say to somebody, my dog ate my cross, it almost seems sacrilegious, right? And then to say that I feel broken. Okay. It's interesting, but church is kind of with candles. So I have real candles that I'll take, but they scare me to death because of fire. But do you know how cheap those little candles are that you buy at Hobby Lobby? Do you all have a Hobby Lobby or a Michael's where you are? Yes. And I have the little thing. I put this inside my box and I turn on the candles and I have about 3 of them. And I put them out when I'm going to pray. Even just setting the milieu, setting the environment is this simple of a little flickering candle that can just quiet somebody who isn't quieted. And I use different things if I'm going in and there's more than one person or a bedside table. This is a table runner and it fits in my box and I just roll it up. All of this fits in this one little box that I can just grab and I roll it up and I keep it in my little box. And I have also, maybe I'm not going to have an overhead table, just a tiny space. I take just a nice placemat and put the candles on that. Was anybody here raised Catholic? No Catholics in the group. That's unusual. I usually have at least one with. Well, when I was a child, I was so profoundly religious that I used holy cards and traded them like baseball cards. I'll give you a Saint Teresa if you'll give me your Saint Joseph. But you know what? Any Catholic knows holy cards and the pictures on them, and they're very inexpensive. And again, this is something I can leave with somebody if they have favorites or they want to do something. I am trying to connect. I am trying to find a spiritual connection with somebody. I did a whole series on Judaism, and I won't go into that today. But I try to find little things. This is a little angel, and it says, may God hold you in the palm of his hand. Sometimes I'll just put that in somebody's hand. And when I find little things, I have a number on my desk now to refill my box with, but I just leave it with somebody, just in their hand. Just a thought that I was thinking of you, and maybe this will inspire something in them. Sometimes they're little crucifixes. I have those. You've seen them at the dollar store even, haven't you? I do, but that's where I pick those up. So my rosaries, my mother had profound dementia. She was pleasantly demented. She wasn't always pleasant when she wasn't demented, but she was pleasantly demented. And she loved St. Anthony so much that she had a little wooden statue of him that I had bought in Oberammergau, and she would kiss that statue every night. And she would say, this is my best friend, and kiss that statue. We're looking to connect to people. So when we go to visit, the biggest problem for me still is knowing when is too short a visit and when is too long a visit. That is still, for me, I pray for that. When I touch the doorknob before I go in, that God will give me the sign, get out or stay a little bit longer. And I don't know about you, but tell me about your visits. Have you ever had a problem with wondering if you should go, or you're too anxious to leave? Yes. Tell me about it, June, can you?
Probably because I'm always concerned about doing the wrong thing, you know. Gosh, I'm trying to pull up a single incident. I remember going to see a woman one time, and this was in a nursing home, and she wasn't doing really well, you know, and I couldn't tell if I was really getting, if we were communicating. I mean, we were obviously not communicating, but I was,
Right.
talking to her, and I knew she had a particular song that she liked, and but then there was that kind of that awkward feeling of, okay, you know, have I stayed long enough? Have I stayed too long and I've tired her out? You know, and you know, to this day I still don't know.
Right.
You know, but yeah, it was and I just wrote down what you said about asking for a prayer, about, you know, saying a prayer on the way in. You know, I used to always say a prayer on the way in. You know, let your words be my words. You know,
Right.
that I hadn't thought about. You know, guide me to be here for the right amount of time. So
That's always a real concern of mine.
yeah. Yeah.
And learning to touch the doorknob, or when you knock, because you have to knock, to make that part of it. Do you know what I mean? Just like you're saying, that my words are the words of God that you need to hear, and that I be given some insight when to stay and when to leave. If I were to give you any thing, I would say to you, leave earlier rather than later, and let them ask you to stay longer, or tell them that the next time you come, you know, and if you're going to be going to see them again, that's the time that you can address that. Do you know what I mean? So, but I find that's one that really makes people very nervous when they go to see people. And I think we should acknowledge the things that make us uncomfortable when we're visiting. And then that's really almost any age, but especially seniors, you know, with limited energy. How about the rest of you? Is there something that, Linda, do you have your hand up with a question, or is it just a little hand I see? There's a little hand up. It's cute. Does anybody have any questions or to what I've covered so far? Okay, then I'm going to ask you one. Linda, how would you drag out the spiritual care box?
How would
yeah,
I
you're
drag
bringing
it
that in, and how do you start with that?
Well, I
What
think
would
I-
you do?
Well, I think I would put it on the floor beside my chair to
Uh-huh.
try to assess the situation first. Unless sometimes I'll take something out, one thing out of my purse, and just set it in my lap to kind of, I don't know, set the stage or to have something to refer to. Because sometimes I'll, it's it's hard to know unless you know the person
Right.
whether they want a prayer or not. So sometimes I'll offer a prayer, but I'll always ask, would you like for me to have a prayer? Would you like to pray? And there are times I've been surprised that when I did pray, then they prayed too.
Yes.
And I thought that was just wonderful. That was very helpful for me.
Yes.
It's such a
Usually the
gift.
Our Father, right?
Yeah, because everybody knows the Lord's Prayer. And
Right.
so,
So that's
um,
almost a gimme. Yeah.
yeah, so that's one fail safe. But usually the Book of Common Prayer sitting in my lap, because you can always offer to do to read different prayers or collects for people who are not well. If they have a friend, and I always ask them if they have someone they want me to pray for, not only in the moment, but during the week or whatever.
I find the caregivers that come in and out of the room and family members need the prayers too.
Mm-hmm.
And I always make it a point, and I have laughed that I've given, I think, more communion in broom closets and back in the break room than I ever have in the residence rooms.
Mm-hmm.
Because they'll say to me, I can't get to church. Can I have communion? I always feel so touched that the caregiver, do you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I always try to leave, when I leave a place, to tell them how appreciative we are and that I'm going to be praying for them, because I know that they need prayer for the jobs that they're doing. So it's no matter who it is, we all need the prayer, but it's kind of nice to recognize them and see them.
Right. Well, our training kind of includes that as lay Eucharistic ministers. If hopefully there's a family member there, and if they are, we always include them, and we always ask caregivers if they would like to be
Beautiful.
included.
Yes, beautiful. Other comments, thoughts?
On the amount of time, it varies, of course, from person to person, but is there a general average?
Well, I tell you that, Pat, maybe you can help me with this one, but I will tell you that I hope that at about the 10 to 15-minute mark, I'm kind of assessing where I'm at. If the person is engaged, do they look tired? Are they, did they start speaking and then all of a sudden not? Do you know what I mean? The other thing is, I'm a gregarious person. I do a lot of training, but when I'm sick, I really like to be alone. I hate to say it, but I do. I like to be alone. So, I just don't want a lot of Valderrama. But I would say, bless you, I think it's very important. And the other thing is, I'm not afraid to ask people questions.
Mm-hmm.
Are you getting a little tired? I'm so glad you let me come today. Is there anything else you want to talk about, or is there anything else I can do with you before I leave? And I've always got my spiritual care box. If I have figured out somebody was Roman Catholic, and I even have some things for Judaism, but not so much because I've given it away. And I need to go back to the store and pick up a few more things, like a mezuzah to put outside their door of their room. Or I try to be very sensitive to everyone's personal beliefs. I'm not there just to, I'm not there to convert anybody to mine. I'm there to walk this journey with them, So my best thing about seniors is to live in their world. What world are they in? Because this isn't about your world anymore when you walk in to anybody's life, really, but seniors especially, we want to live in their world. So I'll share with you my world right now of being 71 and being shocked that I'm 71 and having started so much younger, with this and being where I am. And my journey has taken me into just because of COVID and because I worked in long-term care and not being able to go into long-term care as a non-employee. It was my own consulting business. Was the thought of retirement and actually not, volunteerism, yes, having all the things to do, but what did it mean to me? How much of my identity was tied to my work, to what I was paid, to my title, to my office, to what I do? How much? I was shocked. I would have told you nothing. I could work in a toilet. You can call me whatever you want. Do you know what I mean? I had enough money, but that wasn't true for me. So I think when we're dealing with seniors, we're not talking about just sick people. We're talking about people who are losing their spouses. We're talking about divorce. Do you know the rate of divorce among seniors is becoming great, and COVID has exacerbated that problem. The loneliness of not having a workplace anymore, not having your counterparts that every day are looking at you. I got up and actually put on lipstick for you all today. So I want you to know, I don't think you can see it, but I put it on for you. But I don't put on lipstick anymore. Who am I putting it on for? A dog? So when we think about pastoral care for seniors, are we really looking beyond just the sick and the infirmed? Are we looking to all of us whose lives are dramatically changing, that are moving into empty nest syndrome? I'm now learning to be the mother of an adult child. My daughter is now 35. She loves her mom, but she doesn't need advice. And I said to her the other day, oh my God, Lauren, she took her car in to get the oil changed. And I said, oh, I'm so proud of you for taking care of that. She said, oh, Mom, for gosh sake. She said, think about this. I am a doctor. I work in ICU, taking care of children, saving lives, and you're proud of me because I'm putting oil in my car? And it made me laugh to think, yes, I'm thinking about things I don't think she's going to think about. You know what I mean? I'm not thinking about her career. I'm thinking about, are you remembering to do this or that with your house? Your smoke detectors. She's a child. She'll always be my child. What's it like to grow older? One of these has been on my mind too recently, of losing a spouse. And then I lost a child at 15 years of age, when she was 15. And, you've worked through all that, and you're at work every day, and you're working hard, and you've got so many life activities and other children and a spouse. And all of a sudden the spouse goes off, the job goes off, the child goes off. And who comes back to me stronger than anything but the daughter that I lost that was 15? She rises up in my life, and the grief comes back. Because you know what? I really didn't have a whole lot of time to grieve at the time I lost her. I had a full-time job, as a full-time parent, a full-time spouse, volunteer. When was, yeah, there was grieving, of course, but the real deep work is really kind of now. I wonder how often we think about that when we're caring for seniors or even ourselves. What is that spiritual caregiving like?
I think COVID was really hard for me because I moved back to Texas in May of last year.
Hmm.
And to come back into what for at least 6 months was an empty space. There was no activities in the building. Everything was shut down. You know,
Yes.
I could go to the grocery store, but you know, that was a 5-minute run in and run back out because I really like to pick out my own stuff. But I'm an introvert, or actually I'm kind of on the borderline, but the introvert side of me didn't mind it so much because I had moved from a house where I found, because I am old, that when my son remarried, it was kind of like I didn't exist anymore.
Uh-huh.
And it
You
was
weren't
really,
needed.
huh?
You weren't needed.
I wasn't needed there. The only thing but I was needed at church and I was needed at Path to Shine. And those were the places that I lived, you know.
Right.
But
Right.
yeah, but it was scary. And then moving here for the first 6 months, it was kind of like, this is my own space. Nobody else is bothering me. But, you know, after a while, all of the things that I did, which require connection with others, fell by the wayside. Doing music for yourself is boring.
Yes. It creates more loneliness, more boredom. It's
Yeah,
because it doesn't have a purpose. It
yeah.
loses its purpose for you.
I really thank you for that because it really never occurred to me the purpose was part of it. There's a group of ladies in this building that they play cards starting at 4 o'clock every afternoon, and they invite anybody that shows up. As long as you're vaccinated, you can join their circle. And there have been at least almost 20 people, including me, that wander in and out of that. We started out with one table, or it's now two. And because people are lonely and a lot of times just playing cards, even though you're really not learning too much about each other, sometimes it's an activity where you're together.
Yes. Yes. You're not by yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And what a gift they have been for this complex. It's amazing.
So many things that we don't realize are gifts in our life that we have to share.
Mm-hmm.
And I have found, I've moved all over the world and I've lived very short periods of times in most places. And I have to think about how many friends I really kept very close to. Always at least one from where I live, but not a large group. But also, how good have I been at developing and maintaining those friendships and keeping them fresh? Not just, and I don't send Christmas cards, so it would be a quick email, to somebody. But now that I'm aging up and they're aging up, and I'm very open about what's going on, I'm not afraid to talk about anything. And I now find these friends are really calling me because, listen, they couldn't wait till their husband and they could retire, and now they'd like to send their husband back to work. They don't want him home. I mean, he's putting the spices in alphabetical order and getting angry when they're out of order when he goes to get something. I mean, I could tell you stories of the week from people, but I'm finding that reaffirming these relationships are very interesting. And I do a whole class on sexuality and aging. And these are all topics that are current. I don't want to go on Kristen Mingle, but you might, I don't know. I just can't imagine going out to meet somebody.
I wanted to bounce in and go back to something you said much earlier, Maria, about singing Jesus Loves Me.
Yes.
There's a nursing home that's right across the highway from St. Albans. And for years, we would do a monthly church service, and Community of Hope we would do the Eucharist, and then rules changed in our church, and all of a sudden the lay Eucharist visitors couldn't do communion anymore. We had to take a priest with us. Well, times change. But one of the things it didn't, and mind you, at the time, when I was active in that ministry, I was 70, and we would show up and there'd be nobody in the room. And so we would go to the nurses station and say, this is our Sunday, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
And they would start wheeling people in. Most of them, well, half of them might be asleep.
Right.
Others were, as you said, heads down in the drool. They would say that these are nonverbal people. We had one who did walk in, and she was an interesting individual. And I found this very frustrating that you're bringing us people that are close to comatose. How are we supposed to minister to them? Until it would, and we would have a service. We had a binder, and it was, it was our liturgy until we got to the music. Most of these people came from a Protestant background. We found we had a lot of Baptists.
Right.
And you could drag out some of the old Baptist hymns, things that you wouldn't hear in the Episcopal Church. One of our former priests said, it's because they're so morbid. But we would start singing that, and you're right, heads came up. Or even if their heads were still down and their eyes were closed, you could see their lips moving.
Their lips would be moving. Yes.
They had that deep down memory, and it clued them. And it was amazing. I did not get joy out of the ministry. I wanted things to happen, and that wasn't going to happen. So, I had to find a different ministry. But we had a very dedicated crew who we could count on, and they were wonderful at it. The other thing I wanted to comment on was your half-eaten or quarter-eaten cross.
Yes.
When I was confirmed in 1986, my husband gave me one of the small prayer books and, inscribed it. And I loved that little thing until years later when I was in a choir, and he gifted me one of the combination prayer book hymnals. So he didn't use my little guide that much. Well, one of our dogs ate like a big chunk out of the part where you would hold it,
right,
the palm of your hand,
right,
and that area, there's a chunk about this big out of that little thing, just completely chewed through. Well, it's my favorite prayer book now.
Absolutely.
And I take it, you have to kind of pry the pages apart down at the bottom where the dog spit is kind of glued.
Yes. Yes, but how wonderful. The emotions don't have to be morbid, and it doesn't have to be I'm a saint, It is, these memories are what evoke those feelings that we want to evoke in people. I'll give you a great thing about the nurses, and having been a nurse for years, and it is a pain in the rear end to try to get the meds out, the foods out, get all the charting done, listen to the family. I can't even begin to tell you what a nurse's day is like. And then they say, nobody's bringing anybody to church. It's like, hell, I'm going to either decide to give them the medicine and save their life, or I'll take them over to your service. They need their Coumadin, they need their insulin, they need this. Oh my gosh, it was never ending. When I got into Community of Hope, they talked about how to mix the generations. I got the younger generation, the youth from the church, to come over and wheel the people to the service and take them back to their room. And they didn't have to stay for the service. We
did something similar. And then nursing home has, I don't know if it's Texas rules or somebody's rules, we were no longer allowed to do any transport or even to escort somebody on a walker. So we had to rely on whatever staff was there. Well, you can imagine Sunday, you've got visitors trekking in and out, and the regular things. And we all know, that any hospital is just, they're slammed. And it, when they shut us down and told us we could not transport anybody, we would show up earlier and let them start rolling people. Because if they're asleep, they're okay waiting a half hour for a service.
Well, I will tell you, it is flexibility. It is the rules. I mean, I teach the rules, and I think a lot of them, and I understand it. We've had a volunteer flip somebody out of a chair, and we've been sued. You know, I mean, listen, I've lived through it. There isn't a story you're going to tell me that I haven't really I don't feel like there's any new stories for me. That's the one I'm always saying, you know, teach me a new one when somebody calls me. But flexibility, recognizing that just walking in a room and knocking on a door, if they'll let you do that. But right now with COVID, we're in very difficult times. But I will say that I'm amazed at how old people are with cell phones and able to use the cell phone. I think notes are still very important to people. I have an older woman who writes to me from Miami, and I mean, she writes me these epistles, and I don't have time to send back those lengthy notes, but it's important that I send her a pretty card, you know, and kind words. Our thing, I think, is that we're missing out that you know, they talk about the coming of the gray tsunami. Honey, that tsunami has come. We're not waiting for it. It's here. It is over our head. The number of homeless older people is just profound. We need to start thinking about, and I'll give you one thing that you can do. I hate bingo, if you didn't know. One of the things I learned was, one of the things I really hated were, what were the prizes? What do these people get when they win? A banana. I used to call it bingo for bananas, you know? Who the hell wants a banana if you want the prize? Not me. If you have stuff that you can take as a great prize, do you know what I mean for bingo? A bracelet, a new lipstick. They get to pick off the table what they want. But if you have new things, I go sometimes and I think, gosh, this would be such a wonderful thing for somebody. Books, you know, I mean, they have the same books for everybody to read because you don't want people touching other things. Magazines, they can have their own so that you won't get COVID from McCall's Magazine or Good Housekeeping. But just thinking about invigorating people and making, if you want to make bingo more meaningful, give them a meaningful prize. And that in of itself is special. I called a friend, and you all know Helen Appleberg. You know Helen? I'm going down to visit Helen this next week. And I am going down to Galveston to see her. And I'm taking a friend that we had done a lot of work with Helen. And Helen is in assisted living, and she lets me share anything. You know, she's just such a wonderful person. I have great stories with Helen. And I think about when I go to visit Helen, I say to her, what do you want to do when I come, Helen? She said, oh, Maria, I want to walk on the beach. Helen will not be walking on the beach. So I said to my friend, Nina, she wants to walk on the beach. I don't know how we're going to make this happen. I mean, we can look and see what they have for a wheelchair, but she isn't going to want, you know, so I said, we'll evaluate it when she gets there. And she said, oh, Maria, give it up. She said, I'm bringing the beach to her. She said, I'll go down and collect the shells and get some sand. If she can't get to the beach, I'm bringing the beach to her. And if she can get in the car, we'll drive her on the beach. She said, let me just tell you. So, yeah, it's, to me, we have a lot of work to do with seniors, and even for ourselves, our own self-work. Some of these references in here for other people are references for us that are aging. Katie, you look like a young little thing. You look like a puppy. Are you a
She's
puppy?
adorable.
Are you a puppy? Yeah, unmute you. Yeah,
I'm 29.
you're just a puppy. So as you're sitting there listening to this, what do you think? What's going through your head?
I think I'm thinking about my grandparents a lot. My grandmother suffered from Alzheimer's for several years. But I just have I have one grandmother left, and she's very active. So some of this stuff applies to her, but some of it doesn't. But it's really interesting for me to think about that, and to think about when my own parents get to that point, and how to best support them.
Yeah. Clean their eyeglasses. Go look at eyeglasses. I can't even see out of my own, but I look at people and wonder why they can't see things or why they're not paying attention. My God, their eyeglasses are filthy. The staff never thinks about it. Donate batteries for hearing aids. I know that I've covered a lot of territory, not an ounce of what I love to teach, but at least a start of you getting to know me, how I relate to people. I do apologize if I have offended anybody or there's any language of anything, because to me, this is real world, and I'm going to live the real world, and I'm not changing as I'm getting older. So now that I'm not under the auspices of the Episcopal Church or a not-for-profit that has special rules, I get to be Maria, and I want to be authentic. So any questions? We're right at noon, I think, right? Are we at noon? We're at noon. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna let you have your afternoons off and not keep you till 1. It's time for me to leave. Should I have left 10 minutes ago?
This has been so enjoyable. Thank you so much, because this is a topic that we all needed to hear, and I enjoy hearing it because I'm older than you are, and there are days when it's kind of, I still feel like I'm about 50.
Yes, I'm not used to being elderly.
I don't want to retire. But so yeah,
I hope we can remember our humor, our joy.
I think we need to do that.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Well, let me pray.
You
us
are
out,
so
Deborah.
welcome.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you all for coming, and I look forward to seeing you. I look forward to meeting each of you.
Oh, okay. Well, we're having a thing in January. You will be invited.
Oh, wonderful. I love that. All
Okay.
right.
All
Well,
right.
thank you so much, and you all have a great day. You were a
You too.
wonderful group to talk to.
Thank you.
Really
Thank you so
engaging.
much.
Thanks. Take care. Bye-bye.
Well, everybody, let's just a very, very quick prayer to God for this wonderful time that we had today, for all that we have learned, for the joy that I have heard and felt in this period of time. Lord, send us out rejoicing in the Spirit. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. Thank you.
Yeah. See y'all later.
That was
Good to see
wonderful.
you.
Thank you.
It was.
Good to see you all.